All right. Hello, everyone. This is Tyler James with Comics Launch, and I am here with a special interview that you are all going to love. We are going to be talking about the Breakout launch for Lisa Fowler now as Bloom Pretty. And so to talk about this awesome series, we have them here today. So if you have been checking out the Bloom Pretty Kickstarter, or if you haven't checked it out yet, we hope you do. Also, while I'm streaming live here, if there are questions that anyone wants to share in the comments, please add your questions as they come on. But I want to start by just giving a proper introduction, and then we're going to get into talking all about Bloom Pretty. So my guests today include Lisa Fowler, who is a fantasy writer and creator. She's been working in comics primarily as a colorist since 2007 for the likes of Boom Studios and Dynamite and other publishers. She also runs a very cool clip art business and is now focusing primarily on her fantasy writing. The biggest example of this now is the Bloom Pretty, which recently launched on Kickstarter. We're also joined by her partner and husband, Brant Fowler, who is the publisher of Last Ember Press. He's a writer himself, does the series The Last Ember, has been an active creator in the world of indie comics for decades now, lettering, podcasting, blogging, you name it, he's probably done it. But I'm excited to have them on to talk about their publishing efforts for this latest Kickstarter. So welcome back over here to Comics Launch. Brant and Lisa, how you guys doing?
I'm doing good, and thanks so much for having us, Tyler. We're excited to be here.
Yes, completely.
Yeah, I am really excited to have you on here. Most of you, the longtime listeners of the podcast, will know that Brant is as responsible as anyone for keeping the Comics Launch podcast coming out on a weekly basis, as he helps edit the show. And I know Lisa pitches in there on occasion as well. So thanks again, just for me and on behalf of all the audience. But today we get to talk about the outstanding work you guys are doing, bringing new comics to life. And really where I want to begin here is just give Lisa a chance to tell us a little bit about the project that you do have live on Kickstarter. It's called Bloom Pretty, and this is a project I know that you've been working on for some time. But for the uninitiated, can you just sort of give us at a high level what the story is all about, and then we'll dive into the creation of it?
Sure. This is actually a standalone story that sort of jumps off this new universe or world or whatever you call it. At the heart of it, it's a love story, and it delves into some more mature themes. And let's see, I haven't done the elevator pitch enough. Come on. I gotta learn it. But I wanted to write a book that introduces this world that's not a complete downer, but is sort of uplifting, but still deals with some tragic elements. We've got some obsession and murder going on. And then the cool twist to this story is that all of the characters are plant hybrids, including the animals, which makes them for some gorgeous artwork.
Yeah. And I mean, that was really, one of the first things that stood out to me. When you first shared the preview of this page in one of the mastermind groups, I got excited for seeing this thing, seeing the reaction that this thing would have. And I know you guys have been blown away that people have responded, but just an absolutely gorgeous page and an absolutely gorgeous art to work with here. And so I want to talk a little bit about just the origins of this, because a lot of times people will jump on Kickstarter and they'll see a project and it'll be like, oh wow, this thing came out of nowhere and just blew up. But this is something that I know you've been working on and tinkering with and thinking about for a long time. So can you sort of talk about where the desire to create this thing come from, the inspiration for it, and what it took to actually go from wanting to do it to actually being at this point now?
Oh, sure. The concept for it has been in the back of my mind for a while. It really took off after I watched Game of Thrones for the first time, just getting a feel for that kind of world. And then a interesting tidbit is that it's sort of based on a kid's book that I was obsessed with when when I was younger. Just the plant aspect. I have it with me. It's called Flower Children, and it's like from 1910.
Yeah.
And I used to pore over this thing, and it's just little poems with different people as plants. So that idea has been in the back of my mind my whole life, really.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so when I was thinking about doing a fantasy book, I just thought, well, why not? I was going to do something all ages with it, with the idea, because that's what this was. But then I was like, well, I can twist it to be whatever I want it to be. So,
and I think that it creates like a nice synergy of, you know, beautiful art, but knowing that, okay, this is something that is geared towards adults and or older readers, as opposed to just being, you know, it's not strawberry shortcake, right?
Right.
So one of the things that okay, so you've had this idea, you've been working on, been inspired about it, but to get to this point, you know, what were some of the sort of key milestones or things where it went from, this is an idea and something I'd like to do, to, oh wait, this is really happening?
I can't remember the exact thing that spurred it on, but I was working on I do have an all ages book that I'm doing at the same time,
Which is also fantasy.
Yeah, it's also fantasy, and I've got like the next couple issues of that written and sort of ready to go, but I just wanted to put something out there that was more in line with what I personally would be reading. So, and then we had Ember. His last issue of Ember did fairly well for us. And it was like, well, why don't we just keep going with more of this fantasy stuff geared more toward adults? Because that's just, it does better for us on Kickstarter. And it's what we're reading ourselves. So.
Yeah, and also it's like when you were doing Willamist, you've been doing that for many years.
Yeah.
And you were in a different place, like mentally, and, you know, the things that you consumed and everything. So when, like you said, once we watched like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, and it's like we're consuming much different content ourselves, and it just kind of clicked. And like you said, we've had some success on Kickstarter with other projects that are in the fantasy realm or adjacent, and it just felt like the right time to pursue this one.
Yeah. And so, you know, this is something that for the uninitiated or people that would just hit this page, you know, they come on here and they see like this is sort of the first project launched under the Last Ember account. But it's important for people to know that, you know, this is not your first Kickstarter rodeo, Brant.
Yeah.
You have launched, I don't know, how many projects have you launched or been, you know, managing and running so far?
I think what is it, like 19 now? 19 or 20. It's somewhere around there just for our stuff. And then, of course, I've been involved with others as a letterer or designer and stuff like that. So and so Brant is definitely among the many things that he does well. He's designed many Kickstarter pages, and it's clear that, you know, you brought the best of the best of what you've learned designing a beautiful page into this page, because it's absolutely gorgeous. And so, you know, congrats on that. But that is something that I think is very important, and might not always happen right off the bat, but gets super important as you're a publisher and as you only have limited, you know, time, funds, just things that you can work on, energy, etc. is niching down and really finding your niche as a publishing company. And so, Brant, I guess, you know, for Last Ember Press, how, like, has that been a struggle, or has that been something that, you know, this feels like a natural evolution to? It's a little of both. It's when we started Last Ember Press in 2015, we had the idea that we had worked for so many different, you know, entities or people, and we wanted to do our own thing. And jumping out of the gate, we were a little slow to launch our own titles, and we had friends that that were excited to work with us and everything. So we kind of put like different genres and different titles out that just were like running the gambit of different kinds of mediums, I guess, you know, different genres like superhero and steampunk and things like that. And then when we started getting our stuff out, which was more fantasy based or urban fantasy,
that's kind of where our passions lie. We're both big fantasy fans, and it's always what both of us have kind of gravitated towards as far as the material that we consume. And that's kind of what we wanted to do, but at the same time, we had all these other projects and all these irons in the fire. And over time, as we launched all these projects and put new titles out, we started to see what our audience was geared toward, which was the same kind of content that we're geared toward.
Yeah.
And then it kind of,
funny how that is, right?
yeah, exactly, right.
So drive here,
yeah. So it just clicked. It was like, okay, this is where we're going to go. We're going to kind of shift focus and kind of zero in on the more fantasy and fantasy adjacent stuff. So we still do stuff like cyberpunk and steampunk and stuff, but it's all kind of connected, and there's always some kind of fantasy element to what we put out.
Yeah. And I think that's important to be able to, at least just much like having that quick pitch to your book is important. Having the quick pitch of what is and isn't a Last Ember Press book can definitely be helpful. But I know from my own publishing experience that it takes a while to try to get to that, and when you see a really cool project, sometimes it can be hard to be like, what, we can squeeze that in too.
Right.
It's hard to say no. So this is something that I know I've sort of wrestled with and struggled with a little bit, and I think is actually one of the big pitfalls in working in a genre that you love, like epic fantasy or the fantasy genre, where we are so so many of the stories that inspire us are things like Game of Thrones or Wheel of Time or other things, where these great massive works and achievements, but how do you then translate that to something that actually you can create, and you're not spending all your time world building, and that you can actually launch something? Because we've seen even like for creators where money is no object, like your George R.R. Martin's, like it's still hard to finish a series, right?
Yeah.
And so like I'm curious, like how did you go about going from big ideas and fun stuff, but I actually have to break this down into something that is a digestible piece of a chunk and story, so that I can launch it and get some market reaction and get it out there?
For this story in particular, I actually had a different issue 1 in mind at the beginning, and it was going to lead into this bigger story. And over time, I realized I wanted this sort of smaller feeling story to introduce the world, just to get your feet wet in there before I jump you into this crazy longer story. So that's what this ended up being. And I haven't said it anywhere, but actually the first issue of the series is going to be a time jump, and it's going to be after all of this, but it's going to reference a lot of the things that take place here. So I started with the big, like, I know what I want to happen in the first arc, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like 8 to 12 issues. But then I wanted to leave it open, a more robust world, I guess.
Yeah.
To come back to it if we want to in the future.
Yeah, she had actually written a lot of that other first issue. I think you wrote
it was done.
Yeah, like 40 pages or something, and then she was like, "Wait a minute, I want to scale this back. I want to focus on these two characters that are kind of they're very integral to the other story, the other part of the story once it does do the time jump."
Yeah, and I wanted the romance in the first one. I realized after a while, I thought it worked really well for an introduction.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. I think you'd probably say might even be more so in comics than in prose, to break it down to something that's smaller that you can get out there earlier, because there's so much, there's the writing it, but then there's the bringing it to life, and every page adds time and cost and et cetera. And so and a team that you need to bring on board. So getting them on board for something smaller and more manageable is a key to actually getting this going. And what's great about this is now you sort of planted a flag with the Bloom Pretty IP and brand, such that it's not an unknown quantity. And
Mhm.
you know, like, so I think that's just a great tip for, and why, like with a Kickstarter and with things like that, doing a 0 issue, doing a, you know, introductory story, doing a something that, you know, might that is an easy jumping on point, is always a good smart move to make when you're, especially if you have a bigger world and a bigger story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think readers that read this one are going to be really pleased when that next stage of it comes out, because things that happen in this issue like very heavily impact what's going on. And reading this first, you're going to be already connected to these characters, and it's just going to be a really great springboard, I think.
I hope so.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I know was very important to you, Lisa, was for this book, putting together a, you know, not just an outstanding team, which you have done in terms of creative team, but an all-female team in terms of the creators that have behind this book. Can you talk a little bit about that desire, goal, decision, and then what is it, easier said than done, or because I know, you know, you've been to conventions. I know Brant's been to conventions for years, and it, you know, depending, like, it's still, even though there are always lots of women, and I know a lot of super talented female creators, it does sometimes seem in certain areas that it's a boys club still a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that process and that thought there.
Yeah, when I got to thinking about putting the team together, I already knew that we had Nicole on board for editing, and I had Carola in mind for the artist. And then we were just talking about it one day, and I was like, you know, I don't think I ever worked on an all-female team in any of the books that I colored.
Yeah.
I had quite a few female editors
Yeah.
along the way, but it was never the full team. I was like, and there were some sensitive topics in this issue that I wanted to handle in a particular way. So I just thought it would, all female team would lend itself well to that. And the way that I brought it all together was Twitter is your friend. Because I had a few people in mind already just from reading comics and being a fan. But Twitter has, what is it, Portfolio Day?
Yeah.
And Visible Women hashtags throughout the year. And I had been just stalking those hashtags for over a year before we started really.
Yeah. At least a year. Yeah.
It was a long time, and I made this crazy list, and I've got a ton of people I still want to contact for future work from all of the searching.
Yeah, and like we had worked with Fabiana before.
Yeah.
She had done a cover for our last Kickstarter, In the Land of the Dragon, right? And Lorenza, who did the Princess Bride homage, we had worked with her as well. So we had a few connections, but then like Carola, we really were impressed with her work, like on the Deadliest Bouquet and other stuff we had seen her do. And then like Marguerite was the big get for the cover. You were like,
yeah,
you're kind of scared to reach out to her.
I was really excited when she came on board because I'm a big fan of her work on Faith.
Yeah.
And so when she said yes, I did a little dance in the kitchen when we saw that email come in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just it shows just how much talent there really is out there, because every image I've seen from this is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. Any tips for, like, because you've been watching, been stalking these people, but you didn't for all of them you didn't have a direct existing relationship with them. So I imagine having some people that you did to get the ball rolling and some great art to get it started really helped. But any tips for like creators out there that are sort of itching to send that inquiry, but maybe also are scared to reach out?
Yeah, the mastermind was very helpful with this for me. You just gotta do it. You gotta not be scared and afraid to put yourself out there.
Yeah, and George O'Connor, friend of the show, he kind of tackled that himself and talked about his experience with that, and that kind of helped too. But I think it was just like you said, Tyler, we had some of the art from Corolla, and you used that to kind of approach people. And we also have a track record with our titles and growing success, as we talked about earlier. So that all that helped. But I think it was just, like you said, just doing it, just reaching out and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. Would you be interested in doing, something for it? And then going from there.
Everyone was super nice. The hardest person to fill on the team was the letterer, actually. But everyone I reached out to was really helpful in pointing me to other people and giving suggestions. And then we got Gabriella on board, and she's amazing. She did really great.
The incredible thing about that is all the letterers, like we reached out to several female letterers, and they were all very busy, which I think is just incredible. I love that. So.
Yeah, that's good news, I guess. That their work is being their work is being recognized, and they're getting more of it. So awesome! I mean, like this, it's great to see this. Something I because Brant listens to every podcast and edits them all. He's probably heard me say, every launch is an opportunity to learn something new and try some new things. And so I'm curious, even though you have a tremendous amount of past Kickstarter experience, like, are you trying anything new this launch? Did you try anything new that, because what you're finding here is, I mean, it looks like when this thing is all said and done, this is probably going to be, 3 to maybe 4x some of your past best performance metrics on Kickstarter, which is great. I mean, it's great to have that kind of just a breakout, explosive growth and hit, tracking for well over 1,000+ backers and all of that. So this is it's amazing. But I'm curious, like, what are some things that you've tried on this launch, or anything new, or anything that you want to call out that maybe, when you do your debrief afterwards and look at what worked and what got you this result, what are some of the things that you want to make sure to highlight?
You want to tackle this? You want me to go?
The main thing is that we, from my perspective, is that we sort of leaned into things that we knew worked from previous campaigns.
But the one thing we did try was the pre-launch. This was actually Lisa's idea too, and usually we're like up against the wire to get our pages submitted and get that pre-launch page up because we've announced a date. And we kind of took some cues from some other creators, including yourself, Tyler, not announcing that date. And Lisa was like really adamant about trying a longer launch window. So we decided to push this pre-launch page for like 2 months instead of the typical 1 to 2 weeks that we had been doing. And we just really wanted to get as many people following that page as possible when we launched. And like before that, I think the most we'd had is like 120, something like that. So with this one, we had, was it almost 400?
I think so.
By the time it launched. And it was over the holidays too. So we just kept pushing this out there and just showing different pieces of art as it came in. And
So can you talk a little bit more about, like, when you say, like, it's like, this is something that we've been really hitting, like, submit your Kickstarter page before it is complete. Don't there, as you know, the bulk of, there's like the 80% to get your things ready, and then you'll spend probably another, like, the same amount of time polishing up like the last 20% to make it perfect. But I've been saying, submit your Kickstarter page when it's at that 70-80% mark, so that it gets approved, so that you can get access to that pre-launch page and promote. But and so I've been saying that, but then there's a question of, okay, but how do I actually get people to go click that pre-launch or that notify me button? So what were some things that were working for you, or how are you, like, you're saying put it out there, but like specifically what were you finding, or what were you doing to get people to hit that page and click the notify me?
Yeah, so I mean, it helped that we had this cover image for Marguerite. So that was like one of the first pieces of art that we got, was that gorgeous cover, and so that was our lead in. And we obviously I pushed it out to my newsletter
every week.
Every single week, I was mentioning it and showing different pieces of art, and that across Twitter and Instagram. Not as much Facebook, because I'm more active on Instagram and Twitter myself. I think you'd been sharing it a little bit on Facebook.
But you also, we were working on fulfilling some campaigns through BackerKit at the same time.
Yeah, so I promoted it to BackerKit, past backers of our other projects through the BackerKit launch emails and things like that, and through updates on other campaigns. So just everywhere that I could possibly talk about it. I also do a weekly live podcast myself, so I was promoting it on that almost every week as well. And just, every place I could put it out there and every place she could put it out there, we were just, hitting it hard, but not like trying to overwhelm. We were just kind of slowly, mentioning it here and there and try not to bombard too much, but with all the art coming in steadily, we were able to maximize that. So
and this is one of those things where like there was a common sense, or at least a common sense if you don't actually do this thing where, well, I don't want to start talking about my project too early or showing too much art too early because it'll take all of the surprise away, and then nobody will be interested when the Kickstarter launches. When the reality is the Kickstarter recommendation engine and notify me engine is so good now that like instead of just not talking about anything or just tweeting without any call to action, like this really sounded like it gave you 2 months of just really steady growth to doing something that was going to actually pay dividends when it was time to launch. So it was great to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great that the organic growth of it too, because a lot of people were retweeting it and sharing it, and they were impressed with the art as much as we were. And so that was a leg up as well. So.
Yeah. And I think, this, like, I think what you'll probably find, and if you go into your BackerKit launch metrics, like I'd be curious to see, returning backers versus new backers that are backing, this project that have never backed any of your other projects, but because of the surge and the pop, and then also the appeal of the product that you're putting out there, it shows that there's a real collector base there on Kickstarter that will discover you and find you there. So
yeah, absolutely,
it'll be interesting to see what those metrics look like down the line.
Yeah.
So anything else in terms of like maybe product offerings or anything that you're like, maybe you've either doing new or not doing that you feel pretty good about from maybe a past decision or a past launch that you're just like, oh, never doing that again?
Well, the main thing is that we obviously decided to go all in on variant covers this time. This is the most we've ever had for a campaign.
I believe so.
How many variants are you doing?
We have we have the 5 standard, and then we have I think each cover now has a specialty variant too. And today, after this podcast, actually we're announcing another cover, a wraparound cover that's going to be our next stretch goal. So I think that brings us up to 11 total.
Yeah, but really
only 6, but and then 5 specialties based on the 5. So.
Yeah, this is our first time doing that each version has a specialty version.
Yeah, so like we're doing spot UV on a couple, metal on a couple, and I forget what the other one is now. But
we're not.
Foil. Yeah.
Oh, foil. Yeah, it is foil. Yeah, we tried to figure out which would look best for each treatment, and just go for it and see how it does. And so far, people are responding really well. Most of the specialty covers are virgin variants without the title or anything on there.
Nice. I mean, it does make a huge difference, I think, just in the bottom line, and it's the difference between, and you'll probably see that you're probably seeing that, in your average pledge level too. Obviously, 900 plus backers, you're pulling in a ton of people that are checking out for the first time. But when you can have some backers that are spending, in the hundreds instead of the tens with you, it makes a huge difference overall, and can really, help with the longevity of the series. So I guess this, it sounds like you are already ahead in scripting the future of this series. Lisa, has this sort of changed the trajectory or the priority of how this project is going to figure into Last Ember Press's future, or I'm just curious.
I think it has slightly. It's lit a fire under me to get the next issue finished. It's really close, actually. But the more we can do ahead of the next Kickstarter, I think the better off we'll be. So, but yeah, I think we've pretty much decided to lean into just a few things and try to make them as the best we can.
It's definitely altered the schedule a little bit for sure. It's like we had a plan for like what our next couple of launches were, and then it's like, okay, this is doing really well. Maybe we shuffle things a little bit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is great. Well, yeah, I mean, on behalf of or for the entire team, I hope they've all been excited about how this is going for them as well. And have you seen that? Like, I'm curious, like, has the all-female creative team, like, has that been like something that the team was excited about, and has that maybe led to them sharing or being more active from what you can see to help promote it?
I think so.
Yeah, I think almost, if not everybody, almost everybody has been sharing it on everywhere, like Twitter and Instagram, especially. Like I said, that's where I'm active, and I see them liking and sharing and posting in their stories and that kind of thing.
Better at social media than I am.
But yeah, I think it's helped. I think they were really excited when you pitched it to them.
They all had wonderful things to say on launch day because it went crazy. It was like the best first day we've ever had. It's been great.
Yeah, and I guess take me back to that launch day. Like, you know, do you remember what you were like sort of heart of hearts hoping for on launch day, and then how did the actual thing kick off? And was there anything, you know, because we all have busy lives and hit that Kickstarter launch button, but that's not the only priorities sometimes. So I'm just curious how that went down and for you guys.
I don't remember what I was hoping for.
We were I think you were so nervous that you were just hoping it did well. But I mean, you know, you always want that first day funding, but it was the largest goal we've ever asked for. So we weren't like looking for that, but I think we were hoping for, you know, 40-50%. And I think we exceeded that by far by the first day. And also it's crazy because that launch week, we had so much happen that kind of took us completely out of Kickstarter mindset. We had a pipe burst the day we launched. And so we were dealing with that. We were having the plumbers in and out of the house and dealing with that whole situation. And then later that week, we both got COVID. And so the entire second week of the campaign, we were just like dead to the world. And so we didn't push, we didn't promote as heavily as we wanted to, or get out there like we normally do with campaigns. And so we were kind of concerned about that, but it just kept going and going. And we were just kind of along for the ride at that point because we were barely moving.
Well, first, glad to hear that you guys are, you know, in better spirits and health right now after a heck of a couple of weeks. But that is one of the nice things about, you know, I think putting in the time to plan it well, create a great product, create a great page, because your Kickstarter page, it really can be your salesman, right? And he can work while you're hauled up in bed. So again, just spectacular job all the way around. Before we wrap up here, anything that you want to plug for coming up in the rest of 2022? What else do you guys have that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Do you want to talk about anything? We've got in July, we're doing like a Christmas in July thing. We're bringing on a steampunk retelling of the Christmas Carol.
It's actually by Lorenza.
Who did the Princess Bride cover on this. She's done the entire book, the art and the covers for it. And it is
beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really cool. It's not the Christmas Carol, it's a Nutcracker. It's Nutcracker, sorry. It's a retelling of the Nutcracker. But that's a cool project we have coming up. We're working on another fantasy-esque project that we're not quite ready to announce. But
it probably won't be this year. We don't know.
We'll
That's
see.
one of the ones that we're like, maybe it should go to the back burner.
Yeah, and then the next issue of In the Land of the Dragons should be later this year as well.
Yeah. And hopefully Ember.
Yeah, hopefully Ember. We'll see. Federico's very busy, so we'll see what happens. But
Yeah. Well, awesome, guys. The book is called Bloom Pretty. You've been hanging out with myself and Brant and Lisa Fowler, and we're so thrilled for your success here, and really looking forward to getting my hands on the book, and I know a lot of other people are as well. So thanks so much for joining me and sharing your insights on this journey. Congrats.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, and thanks everyone else for tuning in. We all can't wait to see what you all launch next. Take care.